So this morning we're talking about the NeverEnding Story, Part 3, Mirror, Mirror. All right, and I want you to read with me. In Matthew, chapter 22, what we're talking about here is the story of how the Pharisees were trying to trick Jesus. Okay, they're trying to corner Jesus into a corner and trying to get him to admit that he's less than he actually is. Okay, so we'll pick it up in Matthew 22. If you've read this before, you know the story. If you're still new to church, then this will be exciting for you to learn. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees. So the Sadducees are one sect, right? You know, like priests versus pastors, okay? So hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. Now, first of all, if this guy has already silenced an entire section of the religious establishment, maybe not the best idea to pick on him. What do you think? Right. Maybe you're no, he's on his toes. We're going to take a little while to figure this out. But no, one of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied. Now, I want you to see, Jesus didn't take a second and consult his neighbors. Right? He didn't get with his group of disciples and, they get together and find out their one answer, right? Because they got a chance to tie. If you're playing, Family Feud, right? They didn't look, okay, Jesus immediately answers. So they're trying to trick him, and Jesus immediately answers. Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest in commandments. Now notice what he says in verse 39. And the second is like it. Okay, hold on. Let me stop there. Now, what did they ask him? They asked him, what is the greatest, right? See, isn't that like God? I think that's kind of interesting. Isn't that like God? Like God, we're like, Lord, we just need one of these. And God says, no, you need 8 of these. We're like, Lord, I just need one touch from you today. And God's like, no, you need 3 touches from me today. I just need to have an extra $100 this month to pay my bills. And God says, no, I'll give you $250. So God knows better what we need and knows better what is important than we do. Amen? Amen. Right? So Jesus answered his questions but says, hey, you don't have it quite right here. You think what's the greatest commandment, but I'm telling you that there's 2. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. So Jesus is basically letting them know, not only does he answer the question, and he silences the Pharisees. First he silences the Sadducees, and now he silenced the Pharisees. Is that he's letting them know, hey, I know that you want to know which one's the best, but I'm going to tell you all the things that you need to know that are important for you, not just what you ask. How many of you guys know when you ask God for something, God already knows what you need? Amen. Right? He already knows what you need. And how cool is that? That's a perfect example of sometimes when we ask, we think, man, I hope I ask right, because otherwise God's not going to do what I need. God already knows what you need. When you ask, you can ask wrong. God will still give you both. Well, you only asked about one. God still takes care of everything we need. So I think that's an interesting truth that you can take from that. They only asked him about the greatest commandment. He made sure to tell them that both of them are as important. Right? We talked about it before, is the 10 Commandments. Jesus actually quoted more out of Deuteronomy than any other book he ever quoted. So he quoted out of the law quite a bit. So the 10 Commandments we've talked about before, half of them deal with our relationship to each other and half of them deal with our relationship to God. So Jesus knew you can't separate the commandments without both of those. Both of them are equally important. We've talked about that before in talking about relationship. See, and what's interesting about that is it silences the Pharisees. When these guys are trying to trap him, they're angry with him, they're not happy. They've come to combat him. They ask him a simple question so they can get to him. Okay, and when he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, love the Lord. See, there's something that happens. Those Pharisees shut up. They get silent. Because there's this truth. There's this, think about it. You're in this hostile environment where these Pharisees are coming and they're trying to challenge Jesus, right? And the first thing out of his mouth, man, when you hear that, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. Isn't there kind of like a peace? Can't fight that. There's no battle in me to fight loving God. How can that be wrong? See, because there's this truth that is woven into the very fabric of who we are. It's a part of our DNA tapestry. So we understand that God created us for love. We understand that God wove it into our DNA from the beginning of time that we were created for a fellowship with Him. So when you say, what's the greatest of all these? The greatest commandment, of course, is love, because He created us for it, because of it. It's central and core to who we are and who our creation is. And everything that circles it, right? And in verse 40 it says, and above and all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Everything in our life, like the sun, revolves around that concept that we were created for love. And anything that does not line up with that, usually, pretty much in your life, you can reject. If it does not have to do with love, you can reject it. Now, when we're talking about relationships, obviously we're created for a relationship with God. That's why God created us for a relationship. But now we're not talking about the relationship series, but I am going to get a little bit into relationships here. Now, something that is interesting is besides God, okay, we understand that God is our most important relationship, right? Everyone understand that? God is the most important relationship that we have in our life.
Amen.
Okay? Now, besides that, the second most important relationship. What would be the second most important relationships in our life? Anybody? Huh?
Your spouse.
Right. Most people would say like your spouse, right? Maybe your kids. If you don't have a spouse or kids, like your boss, right? So you don't get fired, right?
Your pastor.
Your pastor. Yes.
Yourself.
About time someone said something right. Come on, preach, brother. Preach. I like that guy today. I like that guy today. Okay. So that's what we would think. Now I'm going to tell you, the most important relationship in your life, you might want to write this one down, get on your long-term caps. The most important relationship in your life besides God is yourself.
Amen.
Who? Okay.
Women
Yourself.
forget that a lot.
Can you say that whole sentence again?
The most important relationship in your life besides God is yourself.
Yeah.
Okay? Now think about it. You spend more time with yourself than anybody else. You spend more time with yourself than any other human being alive. So how's that working for you?
All four of you.
Right? All four of you. How's that working for you? You talk to yourself more than anyone else. Okay? You talk to yourself more than anyone else. Your relationship with yourself matters. It matters. Let me explain something to you. What you actually believe about yourself is mostly because of what you've told yourself. Most of the things you believe about yourself are not from external forces. They come from your own mind.
Mirror, mirror.
Mirror, mirror. Thank you. I'm talking about the man in the mirror. I'm looking to... Woo! Woo! Alright, so...
I just want to see the church just went too far.
Larry's
I can't moonwalk. I can't moonwalk. I can just get the little... He loves it. He loves it. When you got Larry in the corner groaning, you know it's been a good show. Alright, so... I'll be here all night. Thank you very much. I'll be here all night. I'll be here all night. That's Michael, right? Alright, so... who you are is mostly in direct relation to what you've told yourself, right? So a man thinketh, so he is. Anyone ever heard that before? So a man thinketh, so he is. So the thoughts that you perpetrate in your own mind, the things that you tell yourself will affect who you are. If you guys did catch that video, you had a guy being led away in chains. He was obviously under persecution. And when he looked in the mirror, he saw the unpersecuted version of himself, right? The urban version of himself, and the wife, car, suburban house, and 2.2 kids, right? The American dream, right? So he's living the American dream while he's under persecution. So who you are is not in relationship necessarily to what you are so much as what you tell yourself you are. Okay? How you treat yourself in your own relationships makes a difference. The way you see yourself makes a difference. The things that you project to yourself make a difference. And I know what you say, like there's reality and there's perception, and we'll get to that. You spend more time with yourself. Trust me, what you say to yourself matters. Okay? So we're going to look at this little clip.
You could do with a dose of juicy vitamins too. He made it! That's real! He made it through the sixth gate! I always said he could do it! Oh, good! for you to fall out of the basket again. Oh,
I knew he would say.
nonsense! You don't understand anything. The worst one is coming up. Next is the magic mirror gate. Atreyu has to face his true self.
So what? That won't be too hard for him.
That's what everyone thinks. But kind people find that they are cruel. Brave men discover that they are merely cowards. Confronted with their true selves, most men run away, screaming.
This is going too far. What if they really do know about me and Fantasia?
Mirror, mirror on the wall. Anybody know the rest of that?
He's the first.
You guys watch too much TV. All right. Brave men find that they are cowards when they look in the mirror and see themselves. Atreyu looks in the mirror and he sees Bastion. So that's the moment in the movie where you realize that they are alter egos of themselves. Okay, where they are one and the same. They're different versions. Bastion, the scared kid, and Atreyu, the warrior, right? So what Bastion learns when he looks in that screen is that inside of him is actually a warrior. But he doesn't know how to handle that at that moment, right? He hasn't dealt with that so far. But he finds out when he looks into the mirror that he sees his true self. And the question is, are some of you guys afraid to look in the mirror at yourself because you're afraid of what you'll see? Are you afraid that when you look in the mirror, you think yourself strong and you find yourself weak? Are you afraid that when you look in the mirror that you find that what you thought was bravery was actually cowardice? Do you feel like if you look in the mirror at your true self, that what you're going to find is somebody who's not strong enough, who's not brave enough, who's not mighty enough, who doesn't have enough moral conviction, who doesn't have enough character to rise up and do the right thing and stand up for what's right and live for God? Are you afraid that maybe you'll find out that that you're not the man or woman of God that you thought that you were or could be. Here's my question. Forget the mirror on yourself. Is that why you don't ask God how he sees you? Because he's the mirror that matters. Amen? Amen. He's the mirror that actually matters. Do you ask God how he sees you? Are you afraid of that answer? Or are you proud to receive it? Some of you, if I ask you in this room, tell me how God sees you, might get a little nervous. Not because I think you should get nervous, but maybe inside of you, this gate is one of two gates that they had to go through to get to the southern oracle. He's trying to find the answer to saving their land, and he has to go through the second gate, and nobody has ever made it through the second gate. Some have made it through the first gate, but nobody's ever made it through the second gate. He's hopeful that Atreyu can make it so this little man, Ingibod, can get his final research for his research paper. No one's ever made it through a second gate. Nobody's been able to face who they truly are. Most men find they are cowards and run away screaming. That's what he says. So we have to ask us the question. The question is, we spend more time with ourselves. What are we telling ourselves? Who does ourselves think that we are? When we stare into a mirror, when we look into these mirrors, what do we see? What stares back at us? How does God see us? Or are we a mirror? Do we reflect the light of God? See, we're busy trying to figure out what we are and who we are when God has called us to be the mirror. In James 1:23 through 25, it says, anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like a man who looks at his face in the mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looked like. But the man who looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues to do this, not forgetting what he has heard, but doing it, he will be blessed in what he does. So a man that looks in a mirror and immediately forgets what his own face looks like, doesn't even know who he is, what he looks like. So the word says that when we do what God has told us to do, when we read the word and we do the word, that we are not like that man. We are like a man who sees himself and knows who he is. So there's a little secret inside the scripture that teaches us, if we will just stop listening and start doing after we listen, that maybe the man in the mirror starts to look a little better, right? Maybe we start realizing what that man in the mirror is. We start seeing who we are, mirror, mirror. We start realizing that we are who God has created us to be, because the worst thing that can happen is a false perception of yourself. And I'm here to tell you what is that our own perception of ourselves is what holds us back 90% of the time. I don't care which way your perception is. Maybe you are an egocentric maniac. Okay, maybe you're a complete narcissist, and you think that the mirror loves you. All right, you think every time you stare in the mirror, you're just You're one of those people that have to cover your mirror up in the morning before you go to work because you'll never make it to work on time because you stare at yourself all morning. Jason understands this right now. Looking so sexy this week. Right? Honestly, you've been staring at yourself in the mirror a little bit? Oh, yeah. All right? So he's looking in the mirror going, I like what I see. Did you avoid mirrors before at all?
Yes.
Okay, so you see Jason's perception. That's a great example. He avoided mirrors before, and now he can't stop staring at them. Okay, because the mirror shows him who he is. And maybe before he was a little afraid of seeing who he was. He didn't like what he was seeing, and now he likes what he sees. So the question is when you have self-reflection, the question is, what are you projecting to yourself? What mirror are you showing yourself when you talk to yourself? Do you tell yourself you're awful? Do you tell yourself you can't make it? Do you tell yourself you're less than God created you to be? Because I'm telling you right now that you were created in whose image? God's. You were created in the image of the Most High. And you know what? I don't have a bad perception of God. He's the all God, Most High, creator of the heavens and the earth, able to do exceedingly abundantly more than I can ever anticipate or expect. And guess what? He put a piece of that inside of you. You were created for greatness. You may not tell yourself you were created for greatness. You may not think that you have that inside of you, but I'm here to tell you that you are. You are a reflection of God. Your mirror is a reflection of Him in you. That's what you are. Anybody ever been to a fun house? Did you guys go to the fun house at the carnival yesterday? No? No funny mirrors? How many of you guys ever been to a fun house and you go to the funny mirrors, right? You see the funny mirrors, right? Of course, Mandy would expect me to head right towards the one that makes me skinny and really tall.
I was going to say, I always end up at
I go towards the fat, short one. Because then I feel better. That's not me. And then I do the oompa loompa, loompa, right? Right? So I was watching Shark Tank one day, and there's this episode of Shark Tank on there, and this lady had invented a mirror for people's houses for women to get ready in the morning, and the mirror had a slight concaveness to the mirror, okay, just ever so slightly, where you couldn't really tell it was actually doing it. So what it did was it actually, the camera adds 10 pounds to you, so this one actually took away 10 pounds from you. So when you stared in this mirror, you thought you looked better than you did. So because supposedly, her theory was, supposedly when you look in the mirror, you see 10 more pounds than you actually are. So this was correcting it back to 0. So most women would look in the mirror and, change 37 outfits in a morning going, I hate you, you look terrible, right? And just for self-confession, I do that too. Right? So change it. So she wanted to do that. She wanted to alter people's perceptions of themselves and give them a false perception. Of course, the sharks hated it. They're like, this is awful. You're lying to people. Like, that's not who they really are. Yeah.
Did she have a patent?
Right? I don't know if you can patent a concave mirror. Maybe. But, right? If she had a patent, they wouldn't have cared. It was funny to me to see a bunch of billionaires being like, that's lying. That's disingenuous.
Well,
really?
It's no different than putting on like a girdle or some kind of a compression device.
Right. So they were like, they didn't like it. The guys didn't like it. Anyways, but the idea is to show them a more flattering version of themselves. So the question, so the funhouse mirror is kind of the same thing, right? We can look in a funhouse mirror, and sometimes Satan is like that funhouse mirror, right? The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, so he lies to us and he tells us we're worthless, we're not capable of doing anything. I know your past, I know what you've been through, I know where you're going, and he lies to us. I've seen your future, and it's not very good. And he lies to us. He's a funhouse mirror. He completely distorts our view of who we are, and he tells us that, and we listen to him, right? And we listen to him when we repeat it. See, the danger is not the fact that he says it, right? The Bible says don't give the devil a foothold. He's going to say something. The danger is when we repeat it, okay? Because we believe ourselves. The devil walks up to you and says, hey, you're stupid. You'd be like, well, go to hell, right? But if you tell yourself you're stupid, you're going to believe yourself, right?
Yeah, you're giving that perception.
Yeah, you ever told yourself you're not friends anymore because you're rude?
Yes.
I won't be your friend. You're rude to me. No, you can't not be yourself, friend. I don't even know how that works. Like, that's a paradox. I think the universe just blew up. Go in there and you can have an influx capacitor. No, that won't work. Okay, anyways, I'll solve that later. So you can't unfriend yourself, okay? You're not your Facebook friend. You're your friend, okay? So what you say to yourself makes a difference. The enemy can say it, but the danger comes when you repeat it. That's where the evil comes. That's where the problems comes, and where the funhouse mirror effect begins to take place. Or maybe you're the other way, where you have no concept of what you do to other people. Maybe you have no concept. How many of you guys have just said something jokingly and hurt someone's feelings? Like, hello, right? Hello. I spend half my week preparing for my sermons, and the other half apologizing to people for joking. So, it just happens. Like, you say things and people take it wrong and they get upset and they get hurt feelings, right? And here's the thing, is what's so interesting about that is half of it's the person that said it's fault and half of it's the person that heard its fault. And let me explain, because the person is just making a joke. They just said it wrong, right? They didn't mean it. And the other person starts saying, it's not that they listen, they go, ha, ha. Was he serious? No, he didn't mean it. No, I know him. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's just giving. He's just kidding. Yeah, but maybe he was just trying to be nice and joke. Maybe he was serious. Man, am I really like that? Am I really that short? Right? Gosh, man. Do I think I'm taller than I am?
Yes.
Man, I bump my head on some stuff sometimes, right? No, wait, do I? I can't stand up in my car. I'm okay.
We're in the box spring.
Right? But it's not the person that said it. It's us telling ourselves it's real, right? We start to absorb it and say, well, were they serious? Was that, am I doing that? And then that's giving the devil a foothold. You guys need to understand that. It's like, we're always going to say stuff that hurts other people's feelings. It's going to happen. They can unfriend you, but you can't unfriend yourself. But it's not actually the other person saying it. When someone comes up and just levels you, yes. Okay, but when someone comes up and just makes an offhand joke and we take offense to it, I'm telling you that 90% of the time that happens, you're the one making the offense. You're the one that has played it up in your mind and told yourself, why don't you go ahead and believe that and believe it's true. You're looking at yourself in a mirror and convincing yourself that you're the captor instead of the blessed one on the side of the mirror. Do you understand? You're the captor and not the blessed one. No, I'm in chains. And the other side of the mirror says, no, you're blessed. And you're saying, no, I'm in chains. And the other side says, no, you're blessed, right? We have American problems in American country with our American third world nations, and we ask for prayer requests, and we do things here that another country would say, oh my gosh, you don't realize how blessed you are on your side of the mirror, that you can ask for that. That's your prayer request. Your prayer request is for blessings that I would never even know, that I would never even see, right? We pray that our house, or our, for me, I'll tell them myself. Ready? I pray to God to help me, fix my broken Mercedes. My Mercedes. I'm stressed about a broken Mercedes, not a car, a Mercedes. While other people in another nation are just praying for a bicycle to get around. They're praying for a bicycle, and I think I'm here at my house. Yeah, a used bicycle that maybe only has a one tire, and they got to ride it, up like that, like a unicycle, and they'd be happy. Unicycle. A unicycle. Got me a unicycle the other day. By golly gee. Uni means it only got one. I can count that high. All right. So anyways. So we're praying for these blessings that these other people can't even fathom. Right? Yeah, I'm praying for my Mercedes while they're praying for shoes. He's right. They're praying for shoes. We don't understand that we see ourselves shackled, and then we look in the mirror and we realize we're blessed. If we will just take off these blinders, this fog over our eyes of spiritual immaturity that we have, and start looking at our lenses, using God's lenses. God says, that there's a part where Elijah, they're seeing, and Elijah said, there's this army set out in front of them. And there's this giant army, and they're coming to crush these two dudes. Okay? You got these two prophets. One's the prophet in training. One's the prophet. And the prophet's looking out, and the prophet in training is starting to shake in his boots, right? And he's starting to shake. He's scared because he sees this army. And Elijah says to him, "What are you worried about? We got this. It's good. God's got us." He's like, "What are you talking about, man? There's this army, and it's just us two, and they're going to crush us." And he prays God, let him have eyes to see. And when his eyes open up, Mr. Prophet in training, he sees that there's a legion of, I believe, 10,000 angels on chariots, fire chariots, standing between the army of man and them. So Elijah sees there's nothing to worry about. Our army's bigger. But Elisha, he couldn't see that. He only saw what the enemy wanted him to see until his eyes were open. See, he saw correctly. He saw in the mirror the right way. He saw the reflection of what God was doing for him. He saw the blessing that God had for him. And some of us are still staring in our earthly mirrors at our earthly selves in the wrong perspective, seeing ourselves shackled and in chains and not realizing, and so afraid to look at our real selves. See, I'm sure that Atreyu had looked in another mirror before in his life. But see, this mirror was different. This mirror was the true mirror. It was the image reflected from God about who Atreyu really was. And that's why no one had ever passed this gate before, because they finally saw their real selves and they could not be tricked by a false mirror. There was no funhouse mirror. There was no lying mirror. It didn't make you a little skinnier. It didn't make you a little prettier. It didn't make you a little nicer. It didn't make you a little grander. It just showed you for who you are. And some of you in this room are afraid of that mirror. Some of you guys aren't. Some of you guys are on either side of that. You're afraid maybe it'll show you less than you are. Some of you are afraid that it'll show more than you are. Let me explain that. A lot of you are afraid that it'll show you less than what you thought you were. But there are some of you in here, some of you, that are afraid that you're more. Because being more means you have to do more. Being more means you have to stop making excuses and you have to get real. I was called to ministry, but I ran for a little while. When I went to Harvest Time for the first time, I hadn't been in church in a year or two. We tried out a couple of churches, didn't like them, kind of gave up on most churches, felt like they were mostly hypocritical, and so we weren't going. I went back to church, and I'll never forget Nita turning around to me in service going, "You can go up there to play keyboards." She's whispering back there, she's going, "Go ahead." She just wants me to walk up on, "Hi, I'm at this church. I'm just going to walk up on your stage and start playing." Okay, awkward. But she wants me to just walk up there and start playing, and I'm going, And I wasn't like, I didn't do the thank you, that's okay, no thank you. It was like, Misa don't want to play. Misa Jar Jar Binks don't play piano. So, right? So, I'm not going up there. I'm not playing. Why? Because I was afraid that if I got called out, I would have to step up. And I was not in a place that I wanted to step up right then. I didn't want to do what I was called to do. I wanted a minute off to myself. I wanted to relax. I didn't want the pressure of stepping up to what God had called me to. Because I'm telling you right now that Christianity has this false perception of what our faith really means. We think that if we get saved and we have God, we get everything. That it's some kind of like free ATM. We just push the God button and blessings start pouring out and everything. I'm here to tell you that yes, God takes care of His children. While that's true, when you become His, you may have to make some sacrifices. You may have to live your life for Him. Can you believe it? He doesn't live for you. I know. What a revelation. God is not living for you. But I can promise you that your version of safety and comfort and blessing is nothing compared to living for God, even in discomfort. Amen. I don't have a living room, and I'm blessed. If you were to tell me, I'm taking away your living room, well, that's not very nice. I don't want to do that. But if you tell me, now, you told me that months ago, I wouldn't have lived up to it. But if you tell me that now, I say, man, I'm so happy not to have a living room. There is a blessing in this. God knows what He's doing for me. He's a better mirror than I am, and I just need to watch Him and look at Him. So when God looks at me, and I look at me in the mirror, what do I see? Do I see my broken self? Do I see my flawed self? Do I see oh man, I really just need to get running again, or I need to go to the gym? Oh my gosh, I just turned 38, and I need some wrinkle cream, and oh gosh, what am I going to do with these bags under my eyes? Right? Do I see that, or do I see child of the Most High? Strong, courageous, willing to fight for the poor, for the oppressed, for the broken. Do I see someone that's willing to stand in the gap for those that are broken? Do I see the image of God shine back at me? When I look in that mirror, I should see Christ. It says I'm covered in the blood. I should see Christ. I should see a man of God willing to rise up and do what God asked me to do. I should see a man that's willing and committed that will do what God asks me when God asks me. Not a man that will argue with God and say, not now, God, I'm doing what I want to do. I'm going to live for me today. But tomorrow is church, so I'm going to live for you tomorrow. I'm not going to pray today because tomorrow is church. I'll pray tomorrow. I don't need to do that. I don't need to live for you today. I'm going to see myself through my own funhouse mirror and not through yours. Amen. Understand we live in a world of perception versus reality. Okay? Perception is 90% of the truth in the world we live in. Right? It doesn't really matter what you meant. It matters what they heard. Right? Right? When you say something to someone, you say, no, that's not what I meant. And they're like, I don't care. I heard what I heard, and I perceived it this way, and that's the way it is. Right? How many arguments you've been in because you just said something like with the wrong tone you didn't mean to? Right? I'll do that. Like I'll say something to Rachel, and because my mind's on something else, I'll say it with like a harsh tone, and she's like, oh, why are you mad? I'm like, oh, I'm not mad. I'm good. Sorry. Didn't mean it to come out like that. You know, and I've learned to immediately backtrack and then throw a smile on my face so she goes, oh, okay, he was just, I might be deep in a thought about something, so I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And I don't realize that I say it wrongly. But it doesn't matter what I meant. The reality of what I said doesn't matter. The perception is what people take. And no matter what the mirror actually shows, see, we're not looking at that true mirror. We live in a world where perception is our mirror. We live in a world where perception is what the truth is. And so we need to learn to stop looking at perception and start looking at a living God who knows the truth. Amen? Amen. So our reality must be grounded in God's truth, or we run the risk of our funhouse mirrors reality being acceptable. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in a balupa. I don't want that perception of myself. I don't want to stare at that long enough where I believe it's true. How many of you know if you stare at a funhouse mirror long enough, you'll actually probably believe that that's really what you look like? you'll forget what you actually look like, right? And that's what will become true. So let me explain what I mean by that, okay? When you let things come into your life that are not true, that are broken, that are untrue realities of yourself, you take a piece of yourself and you begin to believe that's how you are. Let me explain something to you. When a situation comes up in your life and you have fear, that is a funhouse mirror. Fear is a funhouse mirror because you have a false perception of what God is capable of doing in your life.
Amen.
Fear is a false perception of what God is capable of doing in your life. And let me tell you what, fear tolerated is faith contaminated.
Amen.
Amen.
One more time.
Fear tolerated is faith contaminated. You need to take the contaminants out of your reality. You need to get the perception out of your reality. You need to get the fear and the division and the hurt and the anger and the frustration. All of those are contaminated reality.
Amen.
It's contaminating your faith. It is like a plague on your faith. It is a virus to your faith. And if you stare at that fear long enough, it will become your reality because that's all you can see anymore.
Amen.
That's all you can see. And what you see will dominate your destiny. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have to stop looking at a fake mirror and start looking at God through the mirror of God's eyes.
Amen.
It's time to see yourself for what you are. You know what? And face yourself. Face yourself. If you go to God and you say, God, how do you see me? And you don't like His answer, change. Stop avoiding Him because you might not like the answer. Change. Is anybody in here perfect? Does anybody in here believe for 1 second that they went to God and said, God, tell me all the pros and the cons against me? That God's going to have a pros? You think God will have a few pros? He didn't mess you up in creation. He did you right. He created you right. Do you think it's possible He might have a couple of cons?
Yeah.
Of some areas that God would say, okay, you're doing pretty good, but I want you to grow here. Right? We're all going to have a con. It's going to happen. There's all going to be somewhere we can grow. If we didn't need to grow, we wouldn't be here anymore.
Amen.
God would call us home because we're done. Right? If you let a plant, when a plant is done, when your tomato is done and it's ripe, if you don't pick it and take it off that vine, what happens to it?
It goes down.
It dies, right? Time to go. You got to take it when it's perfect. Otherwise, it'll die. Otherwise, it'll rot. God would take you if you're done. You wouldn't be here. He let you grow till you're ready. If you're still here, you're not done. So it's okay to look in that mirror and ask God, is there somewhere I can grow? Stop being afraid of it. Face it. And allow God to change you. Because He is for you and not against you. He doesn't show you those things to destroy you, but to give you a future of hope.
Amen.
That's why He does it. When you allow fear in your life, you contaminate your faith. Fear tolerated is faith contaminated. The opposite, fear is hope. Well, no, it's love. All right? Once again, we come back to love. It's the opposite of fear. Love. If we'll just put love at the center of everything, then that mirror won't distort. We'll just learn to love. That mirror won't distort. Not just love each other, but love ourselves, right? You spend a lot of time with yourselves. Tell yourself good things. Tell yourself you're capable. Tell yourself you're a child of the Most High God. Tell yourself you're more than conquerors. Tell yourself you're an overcomer. Tell yourself you're victorious. Tell yourself that you are grafted into the vine of Christ. That God so loved you that He gave His only begotten Son. Not them. The Bible doesn't say He loved them. So God so loved me that He gave His only begotten Son. Now, I want you to understand something about that. That wasn't on my verse radar, but let me give you a little truth here. He could have said, God loved me. So He gave His only Son. So He that loves, right? So let me back that up. Maybe I'll pull it up. John 3:16. So God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever should believe in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life, right? He didn't just say God loved the world. He said God so loved the world. He so loved it. Okay. He so loved it He didn't just love you. He didn't just love the world. He so loved it. He emphasized, it could have been really easy to just say, and God loved the world and he gave his only son. But he so loved you. You need to realize that if you put the center of God's love around you, that it doesn't matter what you see in that mirror, whatever reality you actually see in that mirror, where you need to grow and what you need to change, because God so loved you. And that's why he shows it to you, so you can grow. He knows where you're broken. He knows where you're less than, where you need to grow. He made you. He's the one that made you flawed. He's the one that made you imperfect. Do you really think he condemns you because he doesn't understand? He walked the earth for 33 years. He understands. He understands what it means to be tempted. We don't have such a narcissistic God that created us imperfect and said, now try to be like me and you better do it. That's not what he said. He said, just try to be like me. Because I so love you. I so love you. Don't let the fear of who you really are contaminate your faith this morning.